This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Welcome into 21 Questions, the podcast by KCSN listeners, for KCSN listeners. I'm Tucker Franklin, joined on this week's edition by a familiar face that you have probably heard me talk to a whole lot. It's Matty V, Matt Verderam. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing better than all the people who have to look at me again. It's a tough break for them. For me, it's fine.
Big weekend for the YouTube comments, though, for that football show. People saying they love Matty V on the KCSN feed. So
I'll check that out.
Big day for us there. First, I want to give a shout out to Braden's Hope for childhood cancer. Great organization there. I was able to go out to their golf tournament that they held out at Loch Lloyd.
Right.
Phenomenal tournament that they put out there. Just a great cause, really, to be a part of. And what I thought was really interesting when they were sharing some of the statistics, a lot of the money raised for like cancer research, if you're donating to cancer research, it gets allocated all different places, right?
Sure.
But only 4% of that money goes to childhood cancer research. So not a whole lot goes to childhood research if you're donating just to cancer research. So their mission is to raise awareness and funds for childhood cancer research to advance cures and causes for children. They hope to deliver hope to children and families fighting cancer as well. Really great organization. Make sure you go check them out. Glad to be promoting them on this platform as well. But this is 21 Questions. If you don't know what 21 Questions is, we appreciate you joining in and listening to us, number one. Number two, make sure to give us a 5-star rating and review if you do enjoy this podcast. This podcast is going to be partially serious, partially silly. Just a heads up right off the jump. We're going to keep the Chiefs questions in the front half. In the back half, we're going to talk about some questions that are not related to the Chiefs. And that's okay because it's June. It's June. It's early July. So it's okay.
Don't be the guy who's in the YouTube comments who's like, I came to this show for Chiefs content. Bro, it's June 27th.
Right.
Okay? What do you want me to do? Write down like FAU's 40 time? Believe me, we're about 3 weeks away from having to break down training camp footage like it's a Zapruder film with Chiefs PR in the background screaming like, you can't film that. You can't. But believe me, we're gonna get there.
We will, and we'll talk plenty of Chiefs when the time comes. But we do appreciate you. Listen, now, if you're wondering, hey Tucker, how can I ask you guys questions? It's simple. You go to kcsn.substack.com, subscribe for $30 a year, $5 a month. And you can get a link to our Discord where I ask for all the questions. All the questions come from the Discord. It's a perk to our paid subscribers that they get to ask us and basically give us the content for this podcast here. So all we're doing is answering the questions that our subscribers want us to talk about. And first, I want to start with this one from Brian Anderson. Matt, we kind of talked about this a little bit on last week's That Football Show, but can Xavier Worthy buck the historical trend of being slow to contribute for rookie wide receivers in an Andy Reid offense?
Look, last year, Rashee Rice bucked that trend out of necessity because nobody else could do anything. Quite possibly would have had 1,000 yards if he didn't play in the last game, or if he did play in the last game. But to the question, to the point, yeah, Andy Reid, historically speaking, his rookie receivers don't do a whole hell of a lot early in the season. In fact, even really Rashee Rice last year, the first half of the season, was very much a packaged player. If Rice isn't suspended to start the year, I think it's going to be very hard for Xavier Worthy to go off. If he is suspended, there's a world where Xavier Worthy is going to be an important option in the offense quickly. I would say that with Hollywood Brown there and Travis Kelce there, I think the best Worthy's doing is the third option in the offense. I just don't see him being more than that right away. So I guess my overall answer would be it's probably more likely than not that Worthy kind of like finds his way in the offense this year. That's typically how they do it. But I will say, historically, if you look at Andy and his teams in Philly and in Kansas City, if Worthy has like 500 or 600 yards this year, that's a really good sign because that's usually a precursor to becoming, the Jeremy Maclin of the offense, the Deshaun Jackson of the offense. I would say the Tyreek Hill, but we understand it. He's kind of a one-of-one. But that's what Tyreek Hill did his rookie year. He had 600 some odd receiving yards. So I think if he hits that benchmark, 500-600 yards, I think that's great. I think you should be thrilled if you get that from him, and that probably portends some pretty good things to come.
I was just looking up a tweet that KC Sports Network had tweeted out because we were kind of monitoring Rashee Rice's pace as he was going through this season, just to kind of contextualize what he was doing last year compared to what other rookie wide receivers was. This tweet's from October. Notable rookie wide receivers through their first 7 games under Andy Reid. So this is just under Andy Reid, rookie wide receivers. This is both Philadelphia and Kansas City. Deshaun Jackson had 500 yards for the first 7 games. That is like the top. Like that like Deshaun Jackson was the best rookie wide receiver that he has had. I don't know if there's really a debate about that. Jeremy Maclin, again, this is number 2. This is number 2 on the list. Jeremy Maclin had 293 yards. So like that's kind of a steep fall off on the first 7 games. Like I guess it's almost a 100-yard difference. But Tyreek Hill had 223, McCole Hardman 319, Sky Moore had 100, and Rashee Rice had 305. So Rashee Rice, we talk about it. He was doing a really good job of bucking that trend of the rookie wide receivers like that. And I do think that it's going to be tough because I think expectations are already so high for Xavier Worthy. And that's going to be working against him in this. I don't think that we should anticipate, and this is the back half of Brian Anderson's question of what should we realistically expect from him in season 1. I don't think you should expect him to come out there and get 1,000 yards. I think if he gets 500 yards, I think that's a success, truthfully. I think, like, hey, that's a really good year. He got 500 yards in a really tough Andy Reid system for wide receivers. Maybe, 500 yards, a couple touchdowns, maybe 3 or 4. I think that's a really good rookie season for Xavier Worthy. I don't know what your realistic expectations are.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think if you're expecting him to come out and just have 1,000 yards, like that's based on his history, like Andy Reid's history, that's a really tough thing. Like I think if Xavier Worthy is 500 or 600 yards, I think his rookie season is a success.
Yeah. I do think it is really interesting too, especially you kind of hit on it of just with Rashee Rice being there. If he's not suspended at the top of the season, which I would be surprised if he wasn't suspended at the top of the season, truthfully.
Right.
You're looking at his opportunity to get yardage significantly decreases, and when you even talk about if Rashee Rice isn't there, he's still option 3, realistically at best, probably. Option 3. So it is going to be really interesting to monitor that, especially I think there's going to be some comparison with him and Rashee Rice, especially when it comes to production. I don't know if that's necessarily fair because, Matt, as you mentioned, Rashee Rice was out of necessity last year. Like Rashee Rice had to produce or the Chiefs were not going to win any football games. Xavier Worthy is not going to be in that situation because they have Hollywood Brown. Because they have Travis Kelce, I guess. But, I mean, like, they have another number 1 wide receiver where, in Rashee Rice's case, you were looking around and trying to figure out who could catch a football.
Look, they went into last season privately and publicly saying, hey, Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney are going to be really big parts of this offense.
Right.
And that's why Rashee Rice had a big year. Because they had no other choice. It got to a point where they were like, we have to play this dude now because everything else is a disaster.
It was not a great situation there. But okay, let's move on to another Chiefs question here. This one's for Lee87, Nebraska fan. It is little name. He has Rayola for Heisman. That's good luck. What is the area outside of quarterback that you could foresee being the most shocking weakness for the Chiefs this season?
Yeah, quarterback would be pretty shocking.
That was pretty shocking.
Corner.
Ooh.
Corner. Because if McDuffie has to get stuck inside all the time, Williams has never had to play this amount of snaps. And the teams just start throwing at him. I mean, that would be now. Look, I think he'll be fine. I think based on what we've seen, he'll be okay. But that would be my answer. I thought about linebackers because of the depth behind those first 3 guys.
Right.
But I think with linebackers, you could also get away with playing 2 of them a lot. So you kind of hide it that way. I think Watson has proven he's a starting corner in the NFL. But what about Williams? I don't know. He's never played 50% of the snaps in the season. He's going to have to play a bigger role. I think they'll be fine. And I think, look, McDuffie being who he is probably. But if you ask me, like, just a spot, you'd be like, wow, I really thought they'd be good. Like, I do think they'll be good. But I also can see a world where, all of a sudden you're like, hey, this might be a little bit too bright for this guy, so on and so forth. So I'll say corner.
I think that's a good one. I'm trying to think of just other. I think shocking is a good superlative for, like, if corner does struggle, I think that kind of would be a shock. I think that if, like, I'm trying to go through the other position groups too. It was like running back struggle. I don't know if that's a shock, right? Because, like, you look at the depth they have right now. I'm not sure that that's like a big shock. Wide receiver, you do add Hollywood Brown. You have a big addition there in the offseason, but, like, if Rashee Rice is suspended and the receivers don't necessarily take that big leap forward that you're anticipating, I don't know if that's a shock either. And again, staying on the offensive side of the ball, I don't know if tackle would be that big of a shock either, because there's already a conversation about it, and Jawan Taylor hasn't proven to be the best right tackle in the NFL. So I don't think that there would be a huge shock there. I think that the answer probably is corner. They did bring back the entire defensive line from last year. It's the exact same copy and paste defensive line from 2022. So, like, if they struggle, would it be a shock? I don't know. Maybe it could be, but they're another year older, so I don't know what your expectations are for a defensive line that's another year older that's the exact same. Yeah, I think just logically, me working through all of that there verbally, as you got to hear my mental thought process, I think corner makes the most sense in that context of the question. Okay, this one is from Savannah. They gave us a serious and an unserious question. No one wants to think about it, let alone talk about it, but it's a helpful thought exercise to start contemplating how the Chiefs' offense will function without a Hall of Fame tight end, Travis Kelce. His improvisation and mind meld with Mahomes and Reed are inimitable. I think that's the right word. When the time comes, where does the skeleton key come from, if not the pure magic of Mahomes?
That's one of those things that I think, it's a great question, but,
right.
I think it's going to be one of those deals where they're going to have to kind of figure it out as they go. I mean, you're not going to replace that guy. So I would suspect that they will try to add a big-name player, and try to maybe bring in a top-tier receiver, a top-tier tight end. And there's always a chance you draft that guy. You don't know. Maybe you get lucky. I mean, it happens. They had Tony Gonzalez forever, and then they drafted Travis Kelce in the third round.
It's true.
You don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that's likely. Of course, it's not. But, you're gonna have bigger roles go to other guys, and you're gonna have to maybe go out and find the guy that you're willing to pay. And of course, when Travis Kelce retires, you have a lot of cap space all of a sudden that shows up, so you can utilize it. But I think that's what you do. I think you go out and you find that guy. But is there ever going to be a player in Mahomes' career he has a better connection with? Probably not. Right. Realistically speaking, probably not. That you could make a real argument. I mean, how many connections are there in NFL history that are better than those two guys? I mean, it's a short list. It's a really short list. Montana and Rice. You got Brady and Gronk. I know people say Brady and Moss, but Brady and Moss only played a handful of years together. Like, in terms of, like, the historical context of it, Unitas and Raymond Berry. I mean, there are other ones you could throw in there. Fouts and Winslow, but again, they didn't. I don't think. Just because the game was played. I mean, it's probably a top 5 combination ever. Like, it really is. I mean, especially when you factor in the playoffs. I mean, then it goes even higher than that. But, you're not going to have another Kelce in Mahomes. You're just not. But if you have 80% of his production from somebody else and everybody else steps up a little bit, you can kind of absorb it into the aggregate.
Yeah, it's very tough. But I was just looking this up, too, because you were talking about their connection. Right. I believe that they hold the record for most playoff touchdowns.
They do.
Together.
They do.
So,
they broke it last year.
Yep, and they passed Montana and Rice with that one, which pretty good connection, pretty good company to be in Montana.
Those guys weren't terrible.
Right. So I think they're pretty close to like overall touchdown connections too. I think Brady and Gronk might have overall more just because Gronk was such a red zone threat, a lot more than almost Travis Kelce was, right? Like he was I like to say this about, you know how like when they talk about Ronaldo as like a goal poacher, like he'll just sit around the goal and just like poach goals. That's kind of what Gronk was with touchdowns. Like he was just like kind of like a touchdown poacher. Is that like that is one thing about Gronk's like statistical career that I look at and I'm like, wow, that guy scored a lot of touchdowns. Like I didn't realize how many touchdowns he scores until like you start looking at it side by side with Travis Kelce and you're like, well, Kelce's probably not reaching that touchdown number. But golly, he scored a whole lot of touchdowns.
Well, one of the guys who was like that I did not realize he scored this many touchdowns until I went back and looked. Antonio Gates scored 116 touchdowns.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's also in the league for a really long time.
He was in the league for 16 years. Yes. Yeah. 116 touchdowns. And for those out there who are like, well, how many does Kelce have? The answer would be 74.
Mm-hmm.
Regular season. In the playoffs, he tacks on another 19. But 74 touchdowns in the air. Actually ran for 2 as well, which is kind of hilarious. But yeah, he has. I mean, look, the argument for Travis Kelce is that he had 7 straight years of 1,000 yards.
Yeah,
no one else even had more than 4. Like it's just. Kelce is probably the best pass-catching tight end I've ever seen. Even better than Gronk. And the more insulting argument is when people are like, Kittle? No, listen, I like George Kittle, but stop. Like, what are we doing here? Just stop. Yeah. It's kind of like when, like, Josh Allen has a great 3 weeks, and people are like, are they the same? Or him and Mahomes? And you're like, oh, my God, stop. And then he'll throw, like, 3 picks against the Jets,
right? And
they lose him in some cataclysmic way, and then all of a sudden, all those people go back into their cave for a month, and then he has another game where he's also 430 yards, and he's back. And it's like that's the point. He has to come back. The other guy never leaves.
Right.
That's the point. If Mahomes 2-3 picks, we call for an intervention. Like, are you sure it's the same guy? Is it a body double? Like with Allen, you'll go, is it a quarter or a half? I think Kelce. There's no replacing him, but you probably replace him in terms of like you add a big piece, maybe in free agency, and then you kind of hope the other guys step up a little bit.
You moneyball him. You replace him. You replace him in the aggregate. That's what'll happen. I've been using that term a whole lot this week. Great film, by the way. Love that film.
Love that. No, I mean, I grew up an A's fan. Believe me, I'm a big fan. I watched that whole thing unfold and listened to people like, "Oh, walk doesn't matter," and as it turns out, it does.
Yeah.
Fortunately, so does postseason failure, which,
it doesn't, unfortunately, matters a lot. All right, let's take a break, and we'll get into some nonsense questions. I think that was we gave you a good 15-ish minutes of Chiefs talk. That's all you need. We gave you a good 15 minutes. We're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
Okay, I lied. I got one more Chiefs question. I found another one. What contract are you offering Bolden and or Creed? This is from Lee87. Interesting he left out Trey Smith there because I think Trey Smith is going to be a good candidate to get a contract too. But interesting between those 3 guys. We kind of had a preliminary conversation about that on That Football Show this week. Those 3 guys, I think Bolden's getting a contract, and he's probably getting a pretty sizable one, truthfully. The Creed and Trey Smith conversation is going to be interesting on who you pay. The guard market just skyrocketed this offseason.
Yep.
So that could really influence how those contract conversations play out.
All right. So Creed Humphrey. I'm looking at all the centers and when they got paid and how much they got paid. So Lloyd Cushenberry got paid the most this offseason for a center. Got 4 years, $50 million. Okay, it's an average salary of $12.5 million. The highest paid center, all told, is Eric McCoy of the Saints, who signed his second deal in 2022 5 years, $16 million. Most guaranteed money in any of these deals was signed by Frank Ragnow, who was an all-pro center last year. Has been a great player for a long time.
Yeah.
He is the highest paid in terms of average and in terms of guarantees. So he's at 4.54. So 13.5 average, and 42 million guaranteed. My answer then, with that in mind, would be I'd offer Creed Humphrey 4 years, and I'd offer him 52 million, and I'd offer him 40 million guaranteed, 35 to 40 million. Now, if he wanted to beat Ragnow, excuse me, I would go there. I would do it. Like, it's not that big of a jump. Like, if he wanted to go to 4.56 and get 43 million guaranteed, that's fine. Like, I'm not going to sit there and quibble with the guy over $500,000 a year. I'm just not. But if you're asking me what I would start out by offering, that's what I would start out by offering, and then go from there. Bolton is really difficult.
Yeah.
Because the linebacker market is a crap show. So, like, here's why this is impossible. All right. Here are the overall value contracts from most to least, and I'm not going to read obviously all of them. Like, here's the difference between number 1, Roquan Smith at $100 million, and number 10, Kyle Van Noy, is $91 million in overall value. It goes from $100 million to $9 million on inside linebackers. Okay, wow. You've got Roquan Smith at 100, Fred Warner 95.2, Tremaine Edmonds of the Bears at 72. And then Patrick Queen's at 41. Okay, and Josie Jewell's at 18.75. 1 through 5, you drop off $81.25 million.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just so hard to really make that judgment, because, like, outside linebackers are obviously a lot of edge guys.
Right.
Okay, like, it's difficult. Now, for me, what would I offer Nick Bolton? Most of these deals are between 3 and 5 years. Like, I would offer him 4. I'd offer him, like, I don't know, man. I'd probably offer him 4 and, well, Patrick Queen's getting 13.6 a year and making 18. I'd probably split the difference. I'd probably go like 15 million a year. I'd probably go like 4 and 60, and I'd guarantee him half of it, $30 million. Like, and there's a real argument to be made that, like, that's an offer that you shouldn't make. Like, there's a real argument there. I think they will make it, but you could argue that you shouldn't make it. But I think that would be in the ballpark for Nick Bolton.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. Like, if you look at the guys who are at the top of the list, as you mentioned, Roquan Smith, Fred Warner, Tremaine Edmonds, Patrick Queen, like, he's better than Josie Jewell. So he should make more money than Josie. He should be a top 5 paid linebacker. Him and Patrick Queen are kind of on the same level there. They're both kind of meh. So to some people, like, again, linebackers very much are choose your own adventure, right? Like, you either really love a linebacker or you really don't like linebacker. That's what I've found out in just linebacker discourse in general. Nick Bolton might be the most polarizing player in Kansas City's history. I do think that offer that you propose is a likely offer that they would give him. Look, again, I'm not upset if they extend Nick Bolton, truthfully. Like, if they extend Nick Bolton, fine. I anticipate them to extend Nick Bolton. It's going to be the price point that's going to be interesting. I think I could probably be okay with $60 million. I could justify it as, all right, cap's going up. It's going up an exponential amount. So that'll, in the long run, that'll make sense. That'll be interesting. Nate Taylor brought this up too, which was really interesting about 2025 projected franchise tag, because Nick Bolton, I think, would be eligible for the franchise tag. They could place a franchise tag on him. It gets tricky because they list linebackers all together.
Yes,
and that they list them with outside linebackers as well. So then you're looking at a $25 million franchise tag.
Yeah, they're not tagging him at $25 million.
Correct. So that leads to it as, all right, we're probably going to give you an offer. Maybe it's an offer you don't like. You can test the market, but you have this offer to come back on and see what happens. You're obviously more valuable to us. We think you're very valuable to this football team. Here's our offer. You can go check out other offers to see if other teams think you're valuable to them. I'm not saying they won't, but then you can come back here. This is the offer that you have, because there's only one position group that is a higher franchise tag than linebackers, and it's quarterback. Yeah, and I think them lumping outside linebackers in with inside linebackers does that, right? Like edge rushers are considered linebackers, which
is really stupid, by the way. It should be separate, but yes,
yeah. And then DNs also do have their own. It's just $24 million. Still a lot of money to tag. But I do think it's going to be interesting. The Creed contract makes sense in terms of just the market, right? Like if I can justify $12 million a year for 13, 14, even a $14 million, I think I could be like, okay, yeah, I understand that. I understand paying Creed Humphrey $14 million a year, lock down the center that's been with Patrick Mahomes basically his whole career. I think there was 1 year he didn't have him. Austin Ryder, I think is what it was. Might have been 2 years, actually.
Yeah, 3 years without him.
3 years. And he has 3 years with him, right?
Yes.
No. Yeah. Because he's going into his 7th starting season. Okay. So for half of his career, he's had this same center. You want to keep that continuity there. I would be okay with that. Trey Smith's going to be the interesting one, because I think Trey Smith can command like some, the way he's played, he would command some pretty decent money from the guard market.
I don't know how you feel about this. I would pay those offensive linemen before I paid Nick Bolton.
I agree with you. I 100% agree with you.
I don't think they will, but I would.
Right. Correct. That's what I was going with. I 100% agree with you, and that might be bias on my part because I'm a little biased towards offensive linemen, right? Like, especially with Patrick Mahomes and what we saw in the Tampa Bay Super Bowl, I think that you want to keep the offensive line shored up like that, and when you want to have that. But I agree. I would allocate that money there first.
I mean, my entire season's about keeping him upright, and if you do, you can win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, Nick Bolton last year missed half the season, basically, and they didn't skip a beat. They were fine. They just kept winning. That defense was immaculate. And that's not a knock so much on him as it is a credit to Drew Tranquil.
For sure.
But,
absolutely.
You know, look, I think they're going to pay Bolton. And by the way, I'm not upset if they pay him. That's fine. Oh. But I'm just saying, if you gave me the option, I'd pay Humphrey before I pay any of them. And I would pay Trey Smith. Now, there is a caveat with Trey Smith that you brought up, which is right. The guard money went bonkers in the offseason. And if some team offers him Robert Hunt money, hey, here's 5 and 100, bro, go with God. Take the money. Like,
absolutely. Would not fault him a single bit.
No, like not even a little bit. But if there's a world where they can keep him at like 3 and 45 or something, yeah, I'd pay him. Because if you're seeing the tackles, like you have a huge question at left tackle and you've got Juwan Taylor at right tackle. I would pay those guys. And if that means letting somebody else walk out the door, then that's what that means. Like, then I'll live with that. Like, I think Justin Reed is deserving of another contract in Kansas City. I'll tell you right now, I'd pay those linemen before I pay Justin Reed. Because Justin Reed doesn't protect Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
And they can put Brian Cook and Connor back there. They can put Hicks back there. What, you know, if he works out. Like, to me, I would be uncompromising on the offensive line. And I will say, I've talked to people in the building who, they really genuinely want to bring them all back. But wanting to bring all 3 of them back and actually doing it can be 2 totally different things.
You mentioned the interior offensive line as well. Joe Thuney is making a lot of money this year. Yes, Joe Thuney is making $26 million this year. That is the second highest cap hit on the Kansas City Chiefs roster, just behind Patrick Mahomes at $37 million. But I say this to say his contract's almost up. And you're going to have to... If you don't, like, I think you're going to have to pay big money regardless to have one of the guard positions, right?
Yeah.
So it's either you keep Joe Thuney. So yeah, okay. So he still has 2025. So he still has 2025. He's a free agent. He's a unrestricted free agent in 26. So they still would have next year. And maybe the cap goes up enough amount so you can fudge some numbers. I don't know. I'm not a cap expert, but I know that the cap is exponentially rising in terms of the way these teams can fit these contracts in. But that's going to be interesting. Just the whole interior offensive line going to be up. At least they're not all up at the same season. I think that would make it kind of difficult. But
right,
the contract situation there is wildly interesting, especially with that draft class. And we talked about the 2022 draft class too, right? Like that draft class is going to come up the next year, which will be the year. Well, no, we'll still have Jawan Taylor technically on roster under contract because they could restructure as well with not Jawan Taylor, but with Joe Thuney to take that cap number down from 26 to go into future.
They could flat out move off,
or they could exactly. He is coming back from a torn pec and hasn't been at anything. That is something that I think everyone anticipates him to be back and be playing, but like a torn pec is not like an easy injury to come back from as an offensive lineman who you kind of really need your pecs in that position. So, just the contract situation is really interesting that the Chiefs are going to be faced with this year. That's why I think this year, and again, we talked about this on that football show. That's why this year is so important. They have this window right here. They have the schedule to do it. They've got all the guys under contract. It's a big year coming up. Not to put more pressure on it, but I do think that it is it's a very interesting. All right, this one is Lee 87 as well. And Matt, this kind of goes back to the conversation we were having pre-show before we started recording. Question 3: if you're hungry and looking for Italian food, let's hear your Italian food skill. If you don't know, Matt Lane did a Kansas City Italian food skill where he rated all of the position groups that the Chiefs had in terms of like best, good, okay, bad, and it was can't remember. It was Garozzo's, Cascone's. I don't know if it had any of these KC Italian places. And then he did for okay, he put Olive Garden, and then bad was Fazoli's.
we know Matt Lane's not Italian because he put Olive Garden as anything other than like the worst food imaginable. I can't speak to the Kansas City cuisine because whenever I go to Kansas City, I get barbecue. So
that's again fair. Kansas City, though, I was telling you this before, sneaky Italian food scene just because of the ties that they have with the Kansas City mob. Sneaky Italian food scene.
I will check it out. You mentioned the deli before the show.
Oh yeah,
I'll have to hit that heavy. But so I grew up. For most of you who know this already, I grew up in New York, and my whole family's from Jersey, and everybody's Italian. So no shortage of Italian food in my life. I would say like I'm going to New York tomorrow, and I'm going to be there for 17 days, and I will absolutely gain 3 to 4 pounds. It's going to happen. I'm going to come back. I'm going to feel disgusting, and I'm going to be happy about it. It's fine. It's fine. We'll deal with it when it happens. No, I would say, as far as like if I'm looking for Italian food, first of all, there's nothing better than an Italian deli. That is my go-to. You and I were talking about this before the show, ironically. But if I have like Italian dishes, like I'm all about lasagna. I'm all about manicotti. I am a huge like chicken parm fan. But for the love of God, don't overcook the chicken. Right. You got to cook the chicken right. You can't, if it turns into a piece of rubber, I'm going to throw it on the floor and play hockey with it. It's got to have some bite to it. I also just a big meatballs guy, like just a good old fashioned. Like sometimes the classics are a reason. Like just play the hits.
Right.
Don't try to be too in the weeds on it. But yeah, man, like there are some. I've been fortunate enough to live near New York City and live in Chicago, and there have been some great Italian spots I've gone to over the years. But those food groups, like when people talk about Italian food, you can always tell if they're not from somewhere that has Italian food. They're like, oh, like you like Sbarro, and that immediately launches into a fist fight. Like I will also say that New York pizza miles better than Chicago pizza.
Oh, Chicago pizza sucks.
Is that? I don't.
Not pizza.
Oh, but I'm gonna like Chicago pizza is a fucking sandwich that just misses the top piece of bread. Okay, that's not pizza. You should be able to fold the pizza in half and walk around the city with it.
Yeah.
The idea that like I've got to sit. If you need a fork to have pizza, it's not pizza. it's a disgrace to the culture. So that's where I come down. Chicago pizza, people that are like, it's great. No, it's not. Like, if you are in the mood for it and you want to have a slice of it, cool, whatever, fine. But don't tell me that Chicago pizza is great. New York pizza, I can be walking to Madison Square Garden and somebody can go, hey, you want a slice? Yep, sure do, because I can walk down the street. The biggest concern I have is that when I fold it, all that grease is going to drip down the crease and I can't get it on me. Because it never comes out. It is in there for life. Other than that, I'm good. Feed me New York pizza.
That was one of my favorite things to do when I went to New York. This is when I was in high school, I think. We were walking around, and there's just dollar slice places everywhere. You just get a dollar slice. Yes. And I do think I understand the necessity. I don't even know if I should use the word necessity. I understand why Chicago pizza was created, right? Because it's so cold there, and I guess like the regular pizza slices would freeze in the Chicago
in and out. It's a crime against food, is what that is. But that's the other thing though. Like out here in the Midwest, because I live outside Chicago now. Like you can't get pizza by the slice.
No,
it drives me insane. Why can't I promise you. When I go back on Friday to New York, my uncle, 5 minutes down the road from my parents, owns an Italian restaurant that I worked at for years. I was in high school as a busboy and a waiter or whatever. The first thing I'm doing is going there and getting 2 slices, a cannoli, and some garlic knots. That's what I'm doing. Okay, which, by the way, cannoli is my favorite. In fact, I met my wife over a joke about cannolis. Okay, so that is literally how I met my wife. She loves to bake and got into a conversation about food. She's part Italian. I am mostly Italian. And she's like, she asked me something about food. And I said, like, well, my favorite dessert in the world is a cannoli. I love cannoli. I can't get enough of them. She's like, oh, I love to bake, but I've never tried to make a cannoli because they're tough to make. And also I feel like I would eat them, I'd give myself diabetes. And I said, well, I'm not going to let something trivial like diabetes get in the way of a good cannoli. And she busted out laughing, and here we are, 8.5 years later. And I know somebody out there's like, it's not trivial. It's not trivial. It was a joke. Right. But I love Italian food.
Yeah.
Chicago, the pizza's just a disgrace.
I feel like Chicago has a decent Italian food places outside of the pizza.
Question, but the pizza's a disaster.
Yeah, no, for sure. I do love Italian food as well. I was talking about Giovanni's, so I'll give it a shout out on the podcast here in Kansas City, up in Gladstone, I think is technically where it's at. Incredible Italian deli. I love the good. You need to get the good cut in the cross section, right, of the sandwich, and you just see a thick stack of meat, and you're just like, that's exactly what I want.
There is nothing better than when you go into a deli. I used to go to these Long Island delis when I worked with my dad in the summer, and then you go in there and it'd be like, oh, first of all, it's not a real deli if there's not like a board up top that there's like 15 different options, okay?
Yep. And
if you've gone in there and now it's like, oh, the 12, like you don't even have to look at the number. There used to be, I wish I could remember the name of this place. We went in there like a week straight during one of the jobs we worked, and it was a place on Long Island, in Nassau County, and it was like roast beef, Munster, Russian dressing, shredded lettuce, and I'm telling you, man, it was like $12 even then, which is like 20 years ago.
Right.
But to your point, I think they basically put an entire animal on this thing. There was so much. Now I'm gonna have to go to a deli after this. There was so much meat on this thing. Oh my! It was the kind of sandwich you looked at it, you're like, I don't know that I can fit all this in my mouth, but it's worth the attempt.
Absolutely.
And by the end of it, like there's like you're wearing some of it, but you're like, it doesn't matter. It was so good. Like those places, a little iced tea with it. Oh, it's the best.
Yeah. No, the place I go has the little the stick board too that has like the letters in there that the letters haven't been changed in years.
Yes.
It's great. I love it. I love Italian delis so much. A couple more questions here. This one is from Savannah. This is their not so serious question. Mr. Verderam. I put some spice on that one when I said that.
Thank you.
You are given the choice between a lifetime supply of Count Chocula and seeing another Chiefs Super Bowl, but it's not a three-peat. What would you choose?
The Chiefs, but the Count Chocula thing is real.
Stuff, man.
Dude, I stalk grocery stores in like late September because I know it's coming. And I remember like I went to a couple of different ones last fall. They didn't have it yet. And I went to Meijer, and Meijer had them. And I bought like 6 boxes. Mm-hmm. I was able to judiciously keep it around till like January. Wow. Like I'm pretty good about like I'll eat like an animal at first, but then once I know we're getting toward the end of the season, then I hoard. Right. Become like a Count Chocula pack rat. That cereal is why it's only part of the year. I'll never understand, but it's incredible. It's so good.
It is really good. Yeah, it is a goated cereal. It might be on the Mount Rushmore of cereals. Truthfully,
if you had to pick one cereal to eat, what would be your cereal?
It's really good. Like, I can eat Cinnamon Toast Crunch and not get tired of it. Like, that is one of those, like, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, I think is a very top tier cereal. I'm a sucker for Fruity Pebbles, but I think I would get tired of Fruity Pebbles. Like, I think that would just be, like, too much fruity sugar stuff.
The problem that I have, like, I love Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah.
I love Cinnamon Toast Crunch. The problem, like, Apple Cinnamon Cheerios, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now I've gone full on just moron, overeater, asshole, because what happens is I will pour myself a bowl of cereal and I will eat it. But then the box of cereal is still next to me and there's extra milk. And I'm like, I'll just top it off. I top it off like 3 times. And I'm like, okay, you just had like 4 bowls of cereal. Right. What is wrong with you? There's 1,000 calories of Apple Cinnamon Cheerios at midnight. That's where that's why I don't keep cereal in the house. Yeah. Because if I do, it's gone. I'm very self-controlled with most things that I eat, despite my appearance. The second cereal's in the house, it's over. I already told my parents when I go out to New York, I'm like, please don't buy any.
Yeah.
Because I will eat the entire box in 24 hours.
Yeah.
So it's all about knowing your limits.
That's all it is. That's life. Life is about knowing your limits. That's going to do it for this week's edition of 20 Questions. Matt, thanks for joining me. Again, another podcast you guys get with Matt and I. Hopefully you guys stuck with it, stuck through it. If you enjoyed it, give us a 5-star rating and review. As I mentioned on That Football Show, if you leave a 5-star review and mention That Football Show, we will read it on the next show. Now, this isn't That Football Show, obviously, but you can mention this one as well, and I will still talk about it on That Football Show, just because it is Matt and I. But that's going to do it. We appreciate everyone listening in. Also, big thanks to Braden's Hope. Go check them out. Braden's Hope for Childhood Cancer. They do a lot of great work there. You can check them out at their website let me pull it up here, bradenshope.org. As you can go check them out there too. You can donate and you can get involved there in some of the events that they got coming up. Great people involved there as well. So for Matt Verderam, I'm Tucker Franklin. We will talk to you guys next week on 21 Questions.